Hey folks, Amanda here. Just a quick heads up that from time to time, the Survivor's Guide to Thriving podcast does include some adult language. So if you've got kids with you, you may just want to hold on to this episode to listen to a little later. Enjoy! Welcome back to the Survivor's Guide to Thriving podcast, the show for people who are ready to break out of survival mode in order to build a truly thriving life. I'm Amanda Solman, and along with Mark Jewell and the rest of my team here at Mark Jewell Speaking and Training, we break down common roadblocks that keep people stuck surviving and share ideas to help you thrive each and every day. One of the most important concepts we teach here at MJST is the Thrive with 5. Now, just as a refresher, the Thrive with 5 is 10 small actions every day in 5 key areas of life: body, spirit, work, relationships, and community, that really help us take care of all areas of life through a series of positive habits. And one of those Thrive with 5 behaviors is to eat food that gives us energy. Now, most of us know that food is really important, right? Fueling up makes our workouts more effective. Mom's mac and cheese often feels like home. And we venture out to new restaurants to help add that spark of variety to our everyday routine. And like I said, everywhere you look in the MJST toolbox, whether it's those Thrive with 5 habits that I mentioned or the 6 basic human needs and that need for variety, food has the potential to make an appearance. If you're anything like me, though, that's exactly what can make the topic of food and nutrition kind of hard to talk about. It's everywhere. It's a requirement for us to stay alive. But it also has a lot of emotional meaning. And so thankfully, today's conversation is going to deep dive us into that tangled web that is food, nutrition, and health, and hopefully provide some insight into how these dynamics all play together. And to do that, I am joined by one of our MJST success coaches who also happens to be a personal trainer and fitness coach in what little spare time she has, Christina Schroeder. Christina, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I know I'm not everyone, and so I know there's probably people out there who do not have this issue, but I also think that I'm probably not alone in that I struggle with how I personally talk and think about food, right? So on one hand, I want to be healthy, but I also don't really want to be obsessive about everything I eat. You know, I want to enjoy my food, but I also know that overindulging can sometimes be dangerous. So I was hoping that you could start us off by telling us a little bit about how you personally approach the topic of food and nutrition for yourself and for your clients.
Yeah, so you are not alone. And that is definitely something that I find myself talking about on a daily basis, whether it be with MJST clients or with clients at the gym that I coach at. And, my Instagram handle is Just Be Balanced. And it's kind of funny because you can think like, what does that even mean? What does balance even mean? And something I like to tell people is like, you determine your balance, right? So if you know what if you have any health issues, any autoimmune disease, like balance might look different for you than for someone who has no food aversions. Balance for a fitness competitor is going to look a lot different than balance for, a 50-year-old dad that's just trying to get rid of the dad gut, right? Or dad bod. I wish everyone could see, I'm kind of giggling as I say that. That's probably one of the highest insecurities for my male clients is like, they are paranoid about getting the quote unquote dad bod. But there is definitely this need for finding balance. And what I find that's so interesting is people who struggle with compulsive thoughts around what they're eating also are struggling with compulsive judgmental thoughts in another area in their life. So when we are finding ourselves saying like, oh, I'm going to be bad tonight and have a burger, it's like, or you're just being you and you're having a burger, where else are you assigning that, oh, I'm going to be bad and do this, or I am bad because? So it's that awareness around the power that the phrase I am holds, no matter what domain of our lives we're talking about. So when we reference the Thrive of Five, it's showing up somewhere else for you, whether you're noticing it or not. So yeah, it's a sensitive topic. No one wants to hear when they have to remove foods from their diets. So my personal approach to nutrition with myself and with other folks is never to start with elimination, always to start with data collection. When I eat this, it makes me feel this way. When I feel this way, is it aligned with my goals? Is it aligned with my personal, what my personal priorities are? If the answer is yes, cool, good for you. And if the answer is no, okay, let's look at that opportunity for some change, to create some change.
Yeah. I would say those things that you're saying are, I was kind of nodding along as you were talking, because I can definitely see some of those things. And I think it's a hard conversation to have as well, because it seems like in society today, and maybe not even, I'll just microcosm it on social media today, right? Everybody is a fitness and nutrition expert. Everybody has an opinion about what's good, bad, or indifferent. And it can be easy to be very confused about what you should, quote unquote, should or shouldn't be doing. And so maybe that's a good segue into the next question, which is, with all of the information that's out there, your opinion that, which I think I would agree with, like, everybody's needs are different. What do you think are some of those really big misconceptions that are out there about food and about nutrition?
The biggest misconceptions always are aligned with a food being evil, right? Carbs are evil. Fat is evil. Conventional foods are evil. Organic foods are evil. If anyone or anything is coaching you from a really extremist standpoint, back away. Just back away. Maybe slowly for your own safety. But yeah, it's funny. The fitness industry is getting way more attention probably than ever because of social media. So what I appreciate about that is that fitness and nutrition are now a conversation. Which there was, before social media, there was an extreme disadvantage because there was a disconnect around how much information you had access to, depending on where you lived, who you were, things like that. So I can appreciate all that social media is for starting the conversation. However, it's also created a platform for extremism on many fronts that are actually quite scary when you listen to what people are promoting as fact, rather than promoting it as this specific example created these results. And, it ties into what, let's dial it back a little bit. So if I were 200 pounds overweight and I was just desperate for change, it is alarming how many different directions I'll be told to go depending on which social media influencer I choose to follow on my Instagram feed. And, so what I would say is the biggest misconceptions are always around what is labeled as evil. And the best first step you can do is go get your blood work done. Go get a full panel, get a food sensitivity test done, like just at your annual physical, go in and get everything tested so that you can see, okay, I have a sensitivity to these things, so I should consider eliminating them. And then that can help point you in the direction of what nutrition style you want to eat. If you would like to follow a specific one. Yeah, I think that I could go down a rabbit hole, so I'm trying to refrain from doing that. But, when you are eating a certain way, if you're seeing results and the results that you want to see, then you are doing the right thing. I think that first step would always be go get your panels done, come in knowing and understanding your body and your own physical situation. And from there, identify which nutrition pathway would fit best for your individual needs.
That's a good tip. I guess I've never really thought about that. I guess just personally for me, I always feel like, oh man, if you're feeling very unhealthy or you're carrying what feels like a lot of extra weight or something, like you might consider, oh, I should go do these things, but never even thought. I've never heard of a food sensitivity test before. I don't have allergies to anything or anything like that. So it would not even be something that crossed my mind.
Yeah. And so food sensitivity tests, I always recommend the blood work one. There's some that you like swab and, send your saliva in. Find a medical practitioner that does them. That might be my own personal thing, but I just trust that a little bit more. But what's so interesting about it is that there are people who are eating or eliminating gluten and dairy. So those are the common like bad guys in the nutrition world, that eliminate gluten and dairy and are still experiencing autoimmune flare-ups and things like that. Well, when they get their food sensitivity test, comes back and says that actually gluten and dairy are fine for them. They can't eat random things like green beans and garlic, right? And so when they eliminate those, then all of a sudden their rashes start to heal and they start to feel better. So, the more information you can gather about yourself, the better. And yeah, if you don't have access to the medical side of things, like you can absolutely go with like the safe bets of elimination. But I would always encourage people to do their due diligence. Like if you want to take your health and nutrition seriously, to do what you need to do on the front end to get on the right what the right square one is for you, because it is so different.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to a conversation we have a lot, which is, are you treating the symptoms or are you treating the root cause? And right. And so we're like trying to like shoot all of these random targets, hoping that one of them is the root cause, when maybe there's a more effective way to do it and maybe to have a little less stress and anxiety about it in the process. So I appreciate that tip. I want to pivot a little bit to what I don't know. And again, maybe I'm just speaking from opinion and there's all these people out there who are like, Amanda, this is not as big of a deal as you're making it out to be. But I'm going to assume there are a few people out there like me, and I would like to pivot to a little bit to what I think is one of the things that makes food hard is the emotional side of it. I think food similar to like money is another one that I think tends to be a stand-in to filling emotional needs that we have, right? So some people, when they're feeling sad or depressed, go to the mall and blow a bunch of money or get on Amazon, right? Whereas other people, might eat to fill some sort of need. But on the flip side too, like it can be positive, right? There is joy in going out to a restaurant with your friends and trying new dishes. There is joy in having that delicious mac and cheese that your mom makes as your comfort food. Like just because there's emotion tied to it doesn't make it immediately bad. And so I always, whenever I think of this topic of, food and emotion, there was a dietitian, and I don't remember where I read it, but they made some sort of passing comment about how to think that food is only for fueling your body is like thinking sex is only for procreation, right? And maybe that's a rough analogy for some people, but I think it's a really good illustration that, yes, there is like this biological function, but as higher order thinking beings, there's so much more to that. And so I think coaches and fitness people who are like, food is fuel and like, don't think about it any other way, like it's missing a huge part of the puzzle. And so I'm curious for you, how do you balance kind of these emotional, cultural aspects of food with the nutritional aspects? And then how do you help your clients wade through what can feel like really muddy waters sometimes?
Yes. Oh, so big and so important to talk about this. And so my certification is through Precision Nutrition. And what I appreciate about Precision Nutrition is that we spend so much time on the front end talking about the cultural impact of food. And that, there is an emotional component. There is a tied to our roots through the things that we eat, or there's a tie to celebration, or a tie to mourning. Like, there are so many emotions that are involved, especially when you think of specific kinds of food. So if I say turkey, cranberry sauce, and stuffing, instantly Thanksgiving, right? If I say sugar cookies, peppermint mocha, and I'm trying to think of candy canes, you're thinking of Christmas, right? So there are a lot of things. Like, Easter is everything's covered in caramel and like topped with marshmallows, right? Like, there's just these foods that when you hear it, you're like, yes. It's the same way as mom's mac and cheese, or chicken noodle soup when I don't feel well. Like, there are a lot of cultural components that become part of our hardwiring. So we talk about this at, our live trainings, and that is like what's built into us. And where this shows up in a non-food related system is if you look at what laundry detergent or dish detergent that you use, and you look at the laundry detergent or dish detergent that your parents use, quite often it's the same. And it's because it's just like what you do. It's how you celebrate. So the first thing I would say when it comes to approaching this is like the balance piece comes back in. So if I know that I have some pretty lofty fitness goals that have me in a caloric deficit, maybe I'm tracking everything that I eat. This is the extreme example, and it's the holiday season. I am surrounded by potential triggers because everywhere I go during the holiday season, there's cookies on the table, and there's pie, and there are all these delicious things, that it becomes very tempting to start to label those as bad because it's what I need to tell myself to stay true to my goals. But what people don't stop to think about is what's the impact of those around me by labeling it as bad.
Now I'm judging myself because I am having the pie or the cookies. Yeah.
When at first you probably weren't having a second thought because you're just having a cookie because it's Christmas and there are cookies on the table. Right. At the same time, if I am the person who's having the cookie and I know that there's someone that's around me that, can't, for their own reasons, like whether it be fitness or health or whatever they're focused on at the time, this is where I have to be cautious around my own dialogue of saying, oh, you're so good, I'm so bad, look at me having these cookies. And I just call attention to these freaking cookies. And it's like, no, just eat it and move on. And how do we do that? Right? We have to unpack why we've decided that they're better than us because they're not having a cookie. Right? What made them right? What made us wrong? It's just that my goals are different. I'm in a maintenance weight. I can have this cookie and not lose sleep over it because it's not going to make me gain 5 pounds. Now, if you are triggered to compulsively eat 25 cookies because you've decided it's bad, so you want to binge it all out, then there's more work that has to be done there. So, that's the quest that I'm constantly on is like, what if we can just eat our cookie and move on? What if we could show up to holiday meals and trust that there's going to be vegetables there and fill our plates 50% with the vegetables first, then our protein, and then our treats? Like, what's possible if we just shifted like how I go about it rather than having to focus on, well, what food's bad and what food's good? It's just food. It didn't show up to ruin your day or to make your day. So depending on how you're using food as a crutch, right? If you're using it to fuel your need to judge, or if you're using it as a need to fuel happiness, then that aspect is where we've got some more work to do because it's fueling something, right? So to kind of play off of that thing, like, yeah, no, I don't know anyone that can say they don't enjoy pizza. Maybe someone listening is like, I don't like pizza. But I know plenty of people that will go 6 to 8 months without having a piece of pizza because it doesn't align with what their goals are. And then I know people that will eat 3 pizzas on a Friday night because they're lonely. And there's issues on both sides, I would say, of the spectrum. So what's possible when pizza loses its power? And I think that's the conversation to be in.
Yeah. And I think that's really the contemplation I've been having for a while. And I always appreciate, so there's a movement out there, and I know there are mixed feelings because one, I think some people just don't understand what it is. Others think it's a get out of jail free card, but this concept of intuitive eating, which I find to be a really just an interesting thought exercise. But what I really appreciate about that is what I think you're speaking to is that quote unquote fixing, depending on what we're talking about, the food issues is actually a secondary step. And that until we take a good long look at the emotions that underlie it, at the stories that are attached to it, and it's no different than money, right? I think I think food and money have a lot of parallels, right? That, someone who is, not spending money on anything or spending money left and right and not holding on to anything for a rainy day, right? Like those habits will never change until the mindset and the emotions that underlie it change. And so that's just something that I've spent some time listening to some podcasts and reading books about, because just telling you like, oh, just switch to keto and that'll fix all your issues. It's like, I think we're putting Band-Aids on bullet holes right now if we're not actually trying to figure out how we got to this place in the first place. And also, I sometimes wonder, so I don't know. I don't know if I'll leave this in the final cut or not, but something I wonder about is, do I actually think these things about what I should be eating? Or do I just feel like I should feel these things? Like I look back at myself in, high school and college, and I didn't give two craps about what I ate, what other people ate. Like if you're training for a marathon, cool, you do you. I'm not. I like pizza, whatever, right? Like, and now I find myself thinking about these things so often, and it's just like, Amanda, do you actually care about these things, or do you just, because it's in your Instagram feed and on Facebook every day, now do you think you should feel these things? So I don't know, maybe I'm just thinking out loud about my experience, but that's another question I guess I come back to regularly.
Yeah. So there are so many gems in everything that you just processed through. And so I'm just going to break down a couple that stood out to me the most. And so the first one being around intuitive eating. And, there's a lot of theories around intuitive eating. There's going to be a lot of people that'll tell you certain things, but if you just really boil it down, it's eating when you're hungry and not eating when you're not. And being able to tell if hunger is an emotion or boredom, or if hunger is like true hunger. And what we know as Americans is that we are very blessed in that most of us do not experience true hunger. Now, I really just boiled that down and did not do it the service that it deserves for a lot of other things. But
if you want the full book, I have it. It's like 500, 600 pages. It's a big book. So yes.
It's a big book. There's a lot more to it. But it's really just the ability to be able to make that decision and know the difference of that, and then make the decision for what's next for you. And, I was laughing because this morning I was talking to one of my friends at the gym, and I was like, I was a bottomless pit yesterday. Excuse me. I was a bottomless pit yesterday, and I was just hungry all day long. And I was doing all the things where you chug a glass of water and then, wait it out, or walk around your house, or, all the distraction techniques. And I was just like, you know what? Today I'm hungry. And so I'm going to eat what I need to eat. And so, I ate a couple ounces more of steak at dinner, which, I mean, you didn't really have to twist my arm for that, right? Like, it was delicious. And like, there were like little, things that I didn't eat any food that would be quote unquote off my plan. I just ate more of it than normal. And then today I wasn't hungry this morning for breakfast. So I didn't eat, right? Like, there am I, and depending on who I talk to, someone's going to tell me I'm going to develop heart disease because I skipped breakfast this morning, right? Or someone's going to tell me that I'm probably going straight to hell for not being able to control my cravings yesterday, even with all these tricks. And I kind of like giggled to myself when I was driving home from the gym. So I was like, man, I used to be that person that would sit and think about how bad I was for eating. So I follow a specific set of macros just for my fitness goals right now, being postpartum and trying to get back into the swing of things and not even get my body back, like rediscover my body. So all that to say, I have a specific number of macros, but they don't define me. So if I go over, like yesterday, I went over my macros and I slept like a baby because I knew it was what my body needed. So this is where, we have to really be aware of what's going on. Now, if I find myself consistently overeating, there's a few things that are required to know, am I really overeating? So you need to know your total daily energy expenditure. So how many calories on average am I burning? If I'm someone that's doing a workout class every day and then very active at work and doing a lot of things, my total daily energy expenditure is going to be higher than someone who is not exercising and maybe works at a desk all day. So our caloric creation, the caloric need that we're creating is bigger. And then the other number I need to know is my basal metabolic rate. So that is like, if you don't do anything, you just sit, lay really, and breathe, the calories that your body naturally burns on its own to just function. And when I know those numbers, again, now I have the data to know, am I putting myself in too much of a deficit? So people that are eating 12 to 1300 calories, almost 100% of the time are in a caloric, like way too much of a caloric deficit. So they're actually slowing things down, right? So we hear people that are under eating and not losing weight. And, it's so much more than calories in, calories out. So I won't go down that rabbit hole, but it slows our function.
You mean the Instagram
down.
Posts that are constantly it's simple, like, calories in, calories out.
Right. Nutrition's so easy. I just do it in my sleep, right? And I'm like, golly, like, hi, walking, talking trigger. I have to unfollow you now because it's so much more than that. And what I love people that try to make it super simple. And this is why I'm always like, okay, I won't go down this rabbit hole, but know that there's all this additional information here. And it's because there is so much more information that you just need to you prepare yourself with. So, like, okay, if my BMR is 1500, I have no business eating less than 1500 calories. No business. That's for my body to function. Now, how those calories are broken down is going to be different for each person, right? So, some people thrive on keto. You talked about keto. Some people thrive on paleo. Some people thrive on if it fits your macros, where they get a donut, but then also eat a lot of chicken and broccoli because they used all of their carbohydrates to eat the donut. Like, there's a lot of things, and that's your call to make, as long as you're not tipping into like being obsessive compulsive about it. Because at the end of the day, again, the pizza doesn't need the power. You have the power. You get to choose. Like, I'm training for a marathon. I'm going to skip pizza because it gives me heartburn and I have a 25-mile run tomorrow. Right?
The other thing that makes me think about, as you said that, is kind of going to the obsessive compulsive and I think it applies to what you were saying about under eating, which I think people can fall into that trap too, when they are trying to be obsessive compulsive about controlling everything. number one, I think it's also important to recognize, like, if that's you, that it's easy for you to fall into that trap. Cause I know that's me. Like the perfectionist in me is like, oh my gosh, if I'm counting every single thing.
Every
And
single
one
thing.
calorie over is failure. And like, I just know that about myself, which is probably what makes this more challenging for me just naturally. But one thing that the book, I think it was on the book on intuitive eating, but it might've been a podcast that I was listening to. They made the observation that I think is very true that, you know, when we talk about food and nutrition, we talk about, well, I'm controlling all of these dynamics to be healthy. And we forget that the mental health component is a component of health. And so if I'm sacrificing my mental health at the expense of getting physical health, I'm still missing the boat. And so if I am stressed and depressed and self-judging about all of these things, yeah, the scale may show me the number I want, but I'm still not healthy in the holistic sense of the word. And that just really stood out to me because I think there are so many of us that sacrifice one for the other and we're still unhappy.
Yep. Yeah. And if anyone is being coached right now nutritionally and they are experiencing a lot of shame tied to how they're eating, then I would encourage you to either talk to your coach about what is truly being triggered when they're talking to you about your food. And if there's still not a shift in the direction that they're coming from, I would encourage you to consider finding another coach. The reason I say this is so I'm coaching someone right now who has struggled with extreme eating disorder in the past. So, the binging and then the purging being huge for her. And she got down to below 100 pounds and less than 5% body fat. And still honestly believed that she was fat. And this isn't the person that's like, oh, I'm so fat, because they want you to say, no, you're not. Like, she down to her core hated what she saw in the mirror. And so from a nutrition coach standpoint, yes, we do talk about food. We talk about the need for food, why her body needs more food, and are working through that. We've eliminated, she does one body scan every 2 weeks. That just helps us track, like, are we putting on the weight that we need to put on? Are we putting on body fat? Because she's in the danger zone. Like, she is dangerously thin, but 97% of what we work on is mindset. It's all about the mental health side of things. I've also encouraged her to consider therapy. Like, there's a lot of other things that are what I call above my pay grade there. I think everyone should be in therapy. If anyone's listening to this, I don't care if you think you have issues or don't have issues. Everyone should be in therapy. Or talking to someone like a success coach, like talking to someone about what's going on for them and unpacking the baggage that we're carrying. And if we are subconsciously carrying it, it's just as dangerous as when we're consciously carrying it. So it's very surprising, for my clients, like how much time we spend talking about the mental health side of it. And that's for the ones that are doing anabolic dieting style. That's for the ones that don't have any food, like any foods that we've eliminated. That's for the ones that are in a bulk season, for those that are in a cut season, and those for her who are in a maintenance. Like, we're talking about how their energy is, how their emotions are, how they're feeling, how they're showing up for themselves, how they're showing up for others, because there is always a link to mental health and to what your thoughts or actions are with what you put on your plate.
Oh, that's good stuff. I pause just to reflect.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard when you see someone that, you see in them what's possible, and they are so stuck in in their story that they can't see it for themselves yet. But that's also what makes being a coach the best thing in the world, is that you get to be the partner when they do see it. And, you know, when you can celebrate the fact that I'm now 10% body fat, 16% body fat, you know, and there's such a focus on people who want to lose weight that we forget that it's just as hard for some people to gain weight, mentally and physically. And so, you know, they deserve a place at the table to be part of the conversation too. And I think that as a coach, it's been what's the most eye-opening for me is all the different backgrounds that show up when they're finally brave enough to start talking about, like, okay, what I'm putting on my plate matters. And I know that, and I've just got to figure out what's right for my plate and stop looking at the person's plate next to me.
Mm-hmm. And I think that creates a question for me, and I apologize. This was not one of the questions that I sent you earlier to have a prepared response for. But I am curious. Your story made me think of this, but do you think about food and nutrition differently now that you have a little girl watching you? Because I think this is something that comes up for a lot of, you know, I don't know from the male perspective, so I can't speak to this, but, you know, that's something I've reflected on as I've moved into my 30s and thinking about body image and, you know, right, wrong, or indifferent, the metabolism slows down as you get older, right? Like things
hormones.
happen to your body. Thanks, hormones. But it's made me reflect in a way that I've never done before about how my mom thought about body image and what I saw from my mom and some of these things. And so I'm curious, obviously you sit in this role as fitness coach and success coach and that level of influence, but I think all of us in some way, shape, or form have a level of influence when it comes to this topic on the people around us, whether that's just people who work for us or our children or our spouse or whatnot. So I'm curious, specifically for you, has having a child and specifically having a girl, does that make you think about this issue differently?
It does. And, you know, it's funny when we go through some of my titles like fitness coach, success coach, nutrition coach. I had a rough pregnancy, as you know, and was on bed rest for part of it. And I'm extremely sensitive to any hormone fluctuation. So we won't go, again, another rabbit hole we could go down, but I won't. So in all transparency, most pregnancies, they say the healthy weight to gain is 25 pounds. And in my pregnancy, I gained 75 pounds. And I wish I could be like, and it was just all water weight and just fell off, but it didn't. And so I have found myself continuing to work at chipping away and rebalancing hormones and getting my body back in alignment. And I had this really weird thought that it was going to happen really quickly because I was so fit before I was pregnant that, when it didn't, I have learned that, you know, whether you believe in God, the universe, whatever power, that they will speak to you quite loudly. If there is something that you don't want to work through, it will find its way to you and will not leave until you finally start to work through whatever the issue is. And so the conversation I was having internally for a large part of my postpartum experience was like, you're the fat fitness coach. Like no one should be listening to you. You can't even do it yourself. And it's weird because like, it wasn't that I wasn't working out. It wasn't that I wasn't watching what I ate and making sure it aligned with my goals. And then it was when I was on a ride home, I'd gone to Kansas City and gotten an Airbnb, and my mom came and stayed with Ray while I worked. And on the way home, we were talking about when I was growing up. And what I told my mom, and this was a really difficult conversation that we were in, I said, you know, I'm really hard on my body because you were really hard on your body. And I remember you weighing yourself every single day. And I remember you talking about your fat pouch and telling me, and my mom is phenomenal, so I don't want to make her out to be this demon. She's not. But I remember her saying, I never got my body back after you because I'm the youngest, I'm the baby. And, you know, in the moment, I didn't think about it, but I can tell you we were at Images Total Fitness in Dover, Delaware when she said that. And it's something that permanently stuck with me. And so that night it's a 3-hour ride. I said, you know, we can't talk like that in front of Ray. And I won't have you talk like that in front of Ray. And I'm working on making sure I don't talk like that in front of Ray, because I don't want her to ever think that a scale or a pant size is what determines the infinite amount of value that she creates just by being who she is. And I wish that my mom loved herself enough to create that for me. And, you know, what I realize is that it's her work, and she's still in it, and she's in her 60s, and that I've been given this really cool opportunity to work on it now at 32, rather than living this life in the health and fitness industry, still being the person that if I gain a pound is like, you're the fat fitness coach. And so when I finally released that, number one, what a great feeling, like that, you know, my workouts are actually better now. And, you know, my connection to my clients is so much deeper. And the best part of it is my connection to myself is so much deeper, in that it's like, okay, so you see some opportunity, like, let's get it. Rather than being like, gosh, that's so gross. I used to say that to myself, you know, just weeks ago. And it's so crazy to think about, because there's not a piece there. I'm not gross. I'm not this gross, grotesque person. And I had to like give myself permission to like admit that that was the conversation I was in with myself, because I was denying it, because what I shared with other people is like that you've got to shift your mindset. You've got to shift your mindset. But I wasn't walking the walk with them. I was just talking the talk, and on paper, on Instagram, doing the work, right? Like my meals were great. Things were happening. And, you know, now I'm not afraid to post when I bake. Doesn't mean I'm eating an entire piece of cake or an entire cake, right? But I used to be really nervous. Like, what if I post this cake? People are going to be like, well, no wonder she's the fat fitness coach. Like, she's eating the cake, right? And these were honest thoughts that went into my mind. So now it's like, if people know me, they know I'm not eating a ton of cake, because I can't, because food sensitivity problems, right? Like hashtag autoimmune problems, like we can list it all out. But, you know, I can have a small piece of cake and feel great and move on with my day and move on with my life and not feel like this terrible way. And it fits my macros. Like, insert every meal plan ever, right? I can make it work. So that's what I want people to hear, is like, when you finally let yourself be you and live a balanced life, number one, like, gosh, your heart is just so much more complete, and you're able to fit being you into whatever goal you have. So like, I have the goal of getting back on stage. That is my goal. I am working on it. I had to push the timeline back just because my body wasn't responding, and I had to get my panels done and get more data to align with the healthy way to meet my goals. But I also don't have to be afraid of living my life while I am working towards my goal. And what I'm excited about that is that I've got this little 9-month-old that's witnessing it all. And she gets to be part of the conversation of, you can have cookies. Like, these aren't bad. No, we're not going to have cookies every day. Right? Like tonight, there is a group that I follow. It's called Feeding Littles. And they have been very eye-opening too, about how to talk about food in a more positive light with your children. And what I love is that they never say, we're not having cake because cake's a treat, or they're not saying we're not having cake because cake is bad for you. They say, hey, we're not having cake. We're actually having raspberries. Aren't these good? And it's like, that's so simple. Why can't we talk to ourselves this way? Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was a really long answer, but that, I mean, there were so many components of where I had to like give myself permission and say things out loud that were difficult. And it was such an internal shift that had to happen that finally, you know, I'm trusting my nutrition more when I'm eating the exact same things I was eating. Actually, I'm eating more variety than I was, you know, 3 months ago, wherein I was just in a place of total I was just self-destructive. And it wasn't that I was doing anything physically to my body that was self-destructive. It was all mental.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that. I also appreciate just kind of highlighting. I was talking to one of our clients the other day, and I made the comment to her, like, it can be hard in the coaching self-improvement world to make sure you're not coming off as like, I've got it all figured out. Mm-hmm. Right. Like it's just kind of a challenge of the work. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, obviously I truly believe the things we do work and are important, mm-hmm. but mm-hmm. we're all human. We are all fallible and we all fall down and have to figure it out. And so I think what your experience does really illustrate is like, we're all figuring this out every single day. And mm-hmm. that doesn't mean that it doesn't work. It just means that sometimes my head gets in the way or whatnot, and we got to work through that. And so mm-hmm. I just appreciate you kind of sharing that, because if anybody thought that we are perfect and have all the solutions, mm-hmm. you are very, very wrong. Mm-hmm. Right? We're all putting the things we teach into action every day as well. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it takes us longer than other times to remember what we've got to be doing. But I think the most important part is we do keep working and we do keep trying, mm-hmm. and we do keep reminding ourselves of that inherent value, and that it's not mm-hmm. wrapped up in the food or the job or the money or the mm-hmm. fill in the blank. So I really enjoyed kind of going down that side conversation. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate you doing that with me. As we wind down here though, I do have a few more questions for maybe those folks who are struggling with this or thinking about this and want maybe some more actionable tips. Mm-hmm. And so the first question I have for you is what are some ways, we've talked about this a lot, right? Like this good, bad, evil mm-hmm. judgment we lay on top of food. How do you think, or how would you recommend that we start thinking about food in a way that doesn't include that judgment? And I think I just keep it broad, like mm-hmm. the judgment could be of the food, right? That is bad, that is good. Mm-hmm. Or the judgment could be of yourself. I am bad, mm-hmm. I am good for mm-hmm. making certain choices. Like, how do we start to walk away from that?
Mm-hmm. Two basic questions. The first one is, why do I feel this way? And the second one being, is it true? Mm. You can debunk a lot of self-talk about self, food, whatever, by processing those two things. Why do I feel this way? Is it true?
Absolutely. Cool. And then, so I don't know, maybe that's the same answer, but one of the questions I was going to ask you is, obviously there's no one way that works for everybody, but is there anything that you found to be a somewhat simple shift that many people might be able to benefit from?
Yeah, absolutely. So whole foods first is kind of, for anyone that wants to start anywhere, that's always the first piece that I recommend. And that's making the shift to fruits, vegetables, meats, eggs. The less processing, the better. Like the truer to its original condition, the better. And you can zone your whole foods. You can keto your whole foods. You can paleo your whole foods. You can macro your whole foods, like whatever. I don't care which one you want to do or which one you need to do based on health concerns. But whole foods first. The less packaging you have in your pantry, the better. So I saw something last night that made me chuckle, and it was someone that said, "Oh, here's, volume number 794 of nutrition advice book that I got." And I didn't learn anything new. And the person's response was, well, that's because food's always the same. It's your consistency that you need to check. So if you are, whatever you're doing, whole foods first, consistently, you will see a shift one way or the other, whether it be your need for more micronutrients or you need to lose body fat, whatever it is. Check your consistency and check, am I eating primarily whole foods? That would be the basic first step I would take, no matter what nutrition style you are choosing to be part of.
Mm-hmm. I can second that has been one of the biggest shifts in our house in the last few years, as we've tried to make some just habit changes that are sustainable for us. And so on one hand, I throw this out as a tip to anybody who lives in a small household. So if you live by yourself, or for me, it's just me and my husband, cooking for one or two people is absolutely terrible, because recipes are all made for 1,012 people and giant serving, whatever, right? It's really hard. And so that's one of the things we've shifted to, is it is super easy just to make 2 pork chops and some green beans and two sweet potatoes, right? It's very easy when you get to that to cook for smaller quantities of people, I find. And we also don't love leftovers, so it also helps control how much you make. But that's been a big shift for us that we found helpful. And also it's really funny because people will come and stay at our house, and I'll be like, oh, just there's food in the fridge. And they're like, you have nothing. And it's like, yeah, because I only, I stock in small quantities, and most things I tried to do more fresh things. So that's a good tip. I like that one. Yeah. And then finally, last question of the day for you. So I will link up to, we mentioned intuitive eating, we mentioned feeding littles. I will link up to those in the show notes. And when I go back and edit this, I'll re-listen to see if I missed anything else over the course of the conversation, and make sure to link up to that as well. But what might be 1 or 2 resources that you might recommend to somebody who wants to do a little more work on this area?
Yeah. Precision Nutrition, I know I referenced in the beginning. They've got a great public Instagram. They've got a great public Facebook as well. There's private for those of us that are coaching, but if you choose that, if you're not interested in being coached, you don't need to join those. So they have a lot of great information on their public social media accounts that'll also provide more studies and research for you. And then the other one being Alex Q. Macklin, and I'll send you the spelling for that. But he is the coach that kind of started the conversation for me in a bigger way. And I really respect him as a fellow coach. So that would be someone that I would definitely recommend for people to follow. He's also very funny. So if you just need someone that's hilarious when they're talking about certain things, he's very energetic and funny, and he does reviews of different health foods and all that good stuff. But I appreciate Alex. I've known him personally for a very long time, but for his ability to promote hey, eat your alfalfa sprouts, and it's okay to have pizza on Friday night too. Just let's talk about the mindset and mindful eating and what that looks like. So those would be 2 resources that I recommend following.
Awesome. We'll get those linked up in the show notes for anybody who wants to check that out. Yeah. Christina, thank you for coming on the show today and talking through this with us. I think, sometimes when we do teach the Thrive with 5 habits and the idea of food comes up, it can be easy for people to go, oh, they're telling me what to do, or whatever. Now I didn't know I was signing up for a fitness thing or whatever, right? It can be easy. But I think what you've done a really good job of highlighting today is we talk about food as part of whole person development because it impacts us. It impacts us physically, energetically, but it also impacts us mentally and emotionally. And not talking about that is ignoring an elephant in the room. And so when we want people to really be able to break out of that survival mode and truly thrive, what we eat, what we enjoy food wise, plays a part in that. So thank you for shedding some light and insight on this topic.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. If you like what you heard, make sure to jump over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. We appreciate the feedback, and it helps other people find the show. On that same note, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to share it with a friend. As always, if you're looking for more resources to go from surviving to thriving, check out our website at www.markjeweltraining.com. That's Jewel with 2 L's. And you can find us under Mark Jewel Speaking and Training on all the major social networks. Remember, survival is dead. It's your time to thrive today. See you next week.